22. It's that undergrads, if they want to get into research and get research experience, they have to already have research experience. As you know, most PIs probably won't hire a first year because, well, they don't have any research experience, they're going to break something, they're dangerous. There's a host of reasons. They're completely inexperienced. Undergraduate research opportunities created the program REX, or the research experience, to provide students with an entry level of research experience so they could start actually going into labs and have some semblance of knowing what they were doing. And of course, it was to give undergrads a taste of research. Because you're in first year, picture that. You want to know if you like research, but no one will hire you unless you can say, you know what, I love research, I want to go into graduate school, I want to become a postdoc, a PI, got everything planned out. But if you want to actually find out if you like research, there can be some problems. The research experience and Euro are here to provide students with an opportunity to, you know what, just give it a try. Find out if you like it. Alright? And of course, one of the most key aspects of Euro and the research experience programs is to link undergrads and to link labs, researchers, mentors. Now, if I went to your PIs, most PIs, if I just went to them and I said, hey, would you be interested in some free labor? Most of the PIs would probably agree. They'd say, sure. Now, there are other complications with it, but that's the idea. Student is to link students who are interested in getting into research with PIs who are interested in finding keen, young students who want to stay in their labs and who want to get publications and want to become productive members of their labs and of their research. Now, as I touched on earlier, the research experience helps students get into research at younger points, at an earlier stage in their career, first and second years. This means they can stay in their labs longer, and of course, they'll produce more results. They'll produce more papers. Think about it. If you have one student over 4 years versus 2 students who are third year, and of course, so for the first 2 years, you've got a third year, you train them for about a year, and then they've got 1 year of producing results, producing publications. Then they're gone, they're in fourth year, they graduate. Next year, you get another third year, over 2 years, entire year spent training them, and you only get 1 year back, really. Versus, if you get someone in first year, you get 1 year of training and an entire 3 years of actually getting publications, getting research out of them. So there are certain benefits to hiring younger students. Now I'm going to do a quick overview of our program. So the research experience is going to start pretty much tonight. It's not going to get too intensive yet. We're going to start off. We just want a bio from all of our mentors, basically. Because the key point of the research experience is pairing you guys up with students that are interested in your research. We don't want to pair you up with someone who doesn't really care about your research. So we've created bios. Now, these bios are basically just to tell the students, first of all, what is your research actually about? And, of course, where to find more information. Because before we even hand the students to you, the students are going to have to know your research inside and out. And they will actually come up with questions. So the research experience is based around one key research question that the students are going to create a proposal to answer. The students, before they even meet you, should have already come up with 2 to 3 research questions between them. Alright? And the first meeting should be they come to you, and you discuss the research questions right off the bat. They know everything, they know all the literature, but in order for this to happen, in order for them to know all your literature, in order for them to be able to come up with these research questions, you need to give them a bit of a help. You need to tell them, okay, here are some review papers you can go to actually start digging into and understanding my research. Here are some of our most recent publications that discuss what our lab is dealing with right now and the kind of questions that we want to start asking in the future. And of course, if it's something really, really complex, you might want to say, I don't know, we've had some previous mentors actually reference textbooks, say like, okay, this concept is clearly explained in organic chemistry X by Bruce, basically. Okay. So that is the purpose of the bio. Review papers, publication, recent publications, and another one that I didn't mention yet, your lab's website. It provides, generally speaking, this will be the first thing the students go to, is which lab do you come from, what research is your lab doing, and lab's website is probably just as crucial as review papers, and I'd say publications is a little less. The most helpful things are going to be if you've got a really strong review paper and a really good lab website. Alright? But this is all just to help them out. Okay? And of course, this is all due on October 9th. That is a little over a week from now, right now. We should have sent, I believe we sent you all an email sometime this morning, this afternoon about it. If you didn't get an email, send something to us. We'll send you an email ASAP. Alright, the next step. Your students have taken a look at your mentor profiles, at your mentor bios, they've read through all your papers. What's the next step? The next step is the students are going to write up these applications for you. Alright? Right? And basically, they're going to submit all their applications to us. And one part of that application will be a paragraph that we will be sending to each of you. These paragraphs are going to be written by the students, and it's going to be what about your research interests them, most specifically, okay? Now, this is your opportunity to gauge how familiar they are with your research, how interested the students are with your research, and most importantly, whether or not you want to work with them. For the pairing is done by you, basically. We're going to send you around 5 to 10 students who have all said, you know what, there's 50 mentors out there. I think this particular mentor's research, I think your research is the best out of all 50 mentors, and I'm most interested in working with you. They're going to send you a paragraph, they're going to explain, they're going to give you their knowledge, and hopefully capture your interest, alright? Right? And this is the primary piece of information you'll be using to determine whether or not you really want to work with these students. You're going to rate your top 5 students, so say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We always say to rate 5 just in case there are some conflicts. Sometimes halfway through the program, I don't know, okay, not program, but halfway through the process, someone decides like, oh my goodness, my course load is immense. I simply can't do the research experience. Adam, you gotta pull me out. So we still have more people to pair you with. So always top 5 is the best answer. And of course, you'll know your groups by the end of October. Now, the first meeting. Your first meeting with your students will be primarily to discuss your research question, and it should occur in early November, I'd say. Now, this is a pretty pivotal point. It's usually early November, early December, when the students actually start dealing with research and actually start dealing with literature and their research question. And a nice thing is early November coincides to a large number of midterms. So this is when they're going to be panicking. This is when they're going to have a lot of stress on them. As their mentor, you're not to babysit them. However, a pat on the back here and there is always good. Maybe be nice, condole them a bit. It's going to be a very stressful time. But one thing I need to be clear about. If they do not respond to you by November 21st, okay? If they do not respond to you within 1 week, that's not November 21st. 1 week after you've been assigned your groups, you need to message them. All right? You need to message your group to try and set up a meeting. meeting. This is simply because undergrads can be shy. Not everyone is a go-getter. Sometimes you need to show them that, you're human, you're not this big researcher, this famous person that's simply unapproachable. Sometimes it's simply a matter of they think you're completely unapproachable, and they don't want to, they think their research question isn't quite good enough yet, or they want to look at more papers, and they keep pushing it back and pushing it back. So within 1 week, if they haven't talked to you, send them a message saying, regardless of where you are, I want to meet with you, because you have to have that first meeting. You have to check with them, see where they are, because they could just be spinning around in circles, and it's at that point that they need your help the most. Now, if you've contacted them, and okay, it's been 1 week, you've sent another email, it's been 2 weeks, they're simply not responding, or one person in the group isn't responding. You've asked the students, you've asked us to contact them, they're not responding. Actually, no, not us yet. But you've asked the students to respond, to talk to them. There's one guy in the group who's just not talking. That's when you need to give us an email. Send us an email ASAP, because we've had this before where some students will simply drop out of a group and not tell anyone. Anyway, the research experience is a highly competitive program. We have over 200 students currently enrolled. We have 50 mentors. Each mentor will get around 3 students who will all work on one single project. Now, if one of your students is dropping out, there are at least 49 other students that would love to take his place. So message us immediately if one of your students is simply not responding, and we want to take care of these issues as early as feasibly possible, because November, we can slide another student in, they can do all the research, they can get caught up very easily. January, February, that's not going to be as easy. So if they are not responding, make sure to talk to us. We're your friends at Hero. We want to know what's on your mind. Okay. Now to go on to the actual research question. The actual research question, we gave them a lot of leeway. It's not due, the final research question is not due until around January 16th. There's a little bit of leeway, there's a little bit of give and take there, but January 16th is when you want them to have their research question in. And we give them this time because, as I've said, November there can be issues, December there can be issues, so we give them a pretty decent amount of time. And this is where you really want to make sure that they've thought through their question, all right? You want to make sure that they know that their question, their entire research question, is relevant to the real world. I've had students start with research questions that just have nothing to do with the real world, like, is there a vaccine for smallpox or something like that? A research question about that, about smallpox, basically, and developing a novel vaccine. Smallpox is an extinct disease. There'd be absolutely no point in developing a vaccine for it. It would never be funded, basically. There's no point in doing it. For researchers, for professors, for graduate students, for postdocs in the audience, I say ask yourself one question. Would a funding agency fund this project? That's essentially the key point of the research question. Will someone fund this? That's the entire thing I think you should keep in mind throughout the entire research experience. All right, so there are some basic points I'll go over. I'm not going to bore you with this. The basic points: does it fill a knowledge gap? Has someone else done this before? Another point is, of course, so what? Is it relevant to the real world? Is it important to the real world? In their actual application, we will legitimately ask them, what are other research questions you've thought of, and why did you choose this particular one? So the students need to be able to discuss other research questions in the particular field and why this question is better than the others. All right? Now, let's go on. All right, this is another key point. Specific research questions. Some students have said, oh, I'm really passionate about this one thing. It's totally relevant to the real world. Granting agencies would fund me in a second. I'm going to cure cancer. Yeah, technically that's true. If you came up to a funding agency with a paper, slapped it on their table and said, this is how we're going to cure cancer, they might laugh at you a bit, but if you were right, you'd probably get funded pretty well. However, the problem comes down to the fact that you're never really going to put the paper together, at least maybe not in this decade or next decade. It's going to be a little while before someone can do that. There's a lot of research that has to go into such a broad question, in essence. You want to make sure they keep it as specific as possible, and if they want to make it a more broad question, what they should do is, you need to tell them, listen, if you make the question broader, you're going to have to do more work. For example, if you want to analyze a protein pathway, an interactions of various proteins in a metabolic pathway, that's a much larger question with more tests than if you simply want to analyze the structure of a single protein that you think is involved in this disease, or something along those lines. Right? More specific questions are a lot less work than less specific questions. That's something basically, it's a pretty simple point, but it's something to make sure the students keep in mind. And of course, next step is to create an experimental design. This will be due around February-ish. And just like the research question, they need to come up with alternate designs for their particular experiment. And your job is to point them basically to research papers. You want to point them to pretty much your entire job throughout a large portion is they're going to come to you with a bunch of ideas. You're going to review them. You're going to say, okay, I think you should look at this paper. It's got a different methodology you might be interested in, or if they were still in the research question phase, you could say, okay, that's actually already been done in this paper. Why don't you take a look at some of the future directions of that particular paper? A lot of your job will be to guide them, not necessarily babysit them. All right? So, and there will be times they come to you with a lot of scattered ideas. Try your very best to organize all those, to help them organize their scattered ideas, and of course, just reviewing things. Finding little details that'll probably not work and telling them to change them. You're stepping in the shoes of a research supervisor and to a certain degree a PI. You're reviewing their work and you're just guiding them in the right direction. All right? Now for the actual experimental design, basically, I'm pretty sure you guys are all familiar with this, but this is what we'll be looking for specifically in their experimental designs. Specific. We don't want the students to come to us and say we're going to test X protein. We want them to say what specific experiments they're going to do. We want the students to communicate it to us pretty much just as much detail as possible, pretty much. What experiments they're going to do, why they chose those experiments. Take a look at other experiments, why they chose their particular experiments over others, and basically just outline kind of how they would do it if they were actually applying to a granting agency or if they were actually going to do it in the lab. It needs to come across that if they were actually going to do the experiment, they would have a pretty good idea of how they were going to do it. Now, you don't need to go into like, oh, we're going to use the light cycler 480, we're going to use this particular pipette for this particular dilution, not so much that, but say like, we're going to quantify the DNA using Roche light cycler technology. Afterwards, we're going to sequence it on an Illumina platform. Maybe mention the Illumina platform's name. But do you guys kind of get what I'm saying here? Tell me if I'm Tell me if I'm being too vague. All right, excellent. Of course, the other two things you want to take a look at are make sure it's ethical. You don't need to go through any ethical applications, but just a general sense. Make sure it's reasonably ethical. Also, make sure that it's not ridiculously expensive, like, I don't know, a $7 million grant for one particular experiment. Unless you really think the research question would justify that kind of budget, then it's fine. That kind of stuff does happen in the real world. Big projects can occur with big budgets, but keep that kind of stuff in mind. All right. Yes. Now this is something some of you guys may have done in your research careers. Maybe you haven't. It's a proposal type poster. And basically what this is particularly it's more common in the arts than in the sciences. Basically, it's like a work in progress. It's like a work in progress, except pretty much there's no progress. It's a complete proposal. So what you're doing is you're talking about, the poster focuses on the significance of the research question, providing background to allow the reader to understand the research question and the methodology. It focuses on the experimental design. It focuses on, instead of real results, this is a proposal and none of our students will actually be doing these experiments in their labs. So some of our students have included expected results in their posters before. And that's perfectly fine. I actually kind of like them personally, having expected results. This is what we think we're going to see, and if we see this, we're going to do that. And of course, your future directions as comes standard with really any poster. This is just a general gist of a proposal type poster. If you want to go into all this in more detail, we will be handing out supplementary documentation closer to each of the deadlines. Like, we're currently writing up a very detailed, in-depth how to find a research question pamphlet, basically, or how to a research question package right now, and that'll be available around mid-October. All right, now Merck. Do you guys actually, hands up, who actually knows what the Multidisciplinary Undergraduate Research Conference is? Do you guys? Okay, good. At UBC, for undergrads, Merck is pretty much the largest conference you can get into. It's got undergrads who've been doing research since they were in first year, and it's got researchers from everything from anthropology to psychology to biochemistry to some med students, some kinesiology projects. It's the destination for undergraduate research, and it's exactly where your students will be going. All right. Now, for the posters particularly, we're going to provide you with some pretty good outlines for what Merck actually wants from their students' presentations so that you can guide the creation of their posters. But one thing to keep in mind is that Merck is primarily a communication conference. It's not about how amazing your project was. It's not about, did you discover some novel protein that completely revolutionized some field. Doing well in Merck is primarily about how well you can communicate and engage a multidisciplinary audience. So these posters, these presentations, need to be geared so that if you're an engineering, an art student, a philosophy major could understand your poster. Or if you're in history, they need to be geared so that perhaps a nursing student could understand your poster, and vice versa. It's communication to just about anyone in any field. And that is the one thing you need to keep in mind when you're preparing your students for the Multidisciplinary Undergraduate Research Conference. Another note, just as a warning, abstracts for that will be submitted in mid-February, a very hot time for midterms. So you might want to get your students going on that a little earlier if possible. All right? All right, we're getting near the end right now, actually. So, all right, yes. This is just the next couple of slides are basically me telling you guys what are the top 3 reasons. We asked our mentors last year, what are the top 3 reasons you guys came and joined our program? The number 1 reason we found was they were looking for undergrads. And to be honest, we were actually kind of surprised at the time. We didn't quite think that would be the reason. We thought it was going to be leadership experience or something else, but they were hunting undergrads. And I guess now that I think about it, you make a bio, you're presenting your bio to over 200 undergrads that have already been selected as keen undergrads. They're interested in research, they want to learn more, and you basically get to advertise to 200 of the keenest undergrads as you can find. And then the next step is around 10 will apply to you, saying that, you know what, your work's the most interesting out of 50 other researchers I've seen. And they want to work with you exclusively. So, what else do you really want? When you're looking for interviewing students, you want to have a large sample size, you want students that are interested in your research. You already have those 2 within a couple of weeks of the program. And, of course, you get to test them out for around 6 months. So, you want to interview a student? What's a better way to interview them than actually have them do a theoretical research project alongside their coursework? You'll get to legitimately see, can they balance their coursework and this project at the same time? You'll get to see what happens when they're under stress, and a lot of stress. Trust me on that one. You'll get to see, do they procrastinate? 80% do. And when they do procrastinate, how do they make up for the work that they've missed? Yes, all these strategies you get to see. Do you like them? Do you enjoy working with them? Do you get along with them? You've got an entire 6 months to simply find it out, and our undergrads know that simply you are just their mentor. You are just there to help them out through the process. There's no obligation to have a student. Maybe you don't like all of the students. Maybe the project failed. Maybe you just want to go somewhere else. That's fine. You're under no obligation to hire them or do anything with them, right? You're just here to be their mentor. But if you want students and, if you're actually looking to test them out, this is a very good way of doing it. I also should note that the students who make it through this program are generally very, very strong. To mention, one of our students last year competed in Merck and won first place for her poster on Alzheimer's, on a novel drug intervention for Alzheimer's disease. And our students generally placed very well in Merck. And in general, they've been quite successful in their research careers. Out of all the students I've talked to, I'd say one student I've talked to did not get into a lab within about 4 months after leaving our program, basically. If they make it through, generally speaking, they're all very strong students. Now, aside from finding students, of course, depending on where you are in your career, we've got everyone from first-year master students to full-fledged faculty members applying to our program. For the first-year or master students, for some of the early PhD students, you may be looking to build leadership experience. And this was what they said, was that they liked our program because it helped them build leadership experience that they could use for their grants most master and PhD students have grants they need leadership experience for. I just finished writing a letter of reference for a couple of our previous mentors, so if you want letters of reference, this is also a good way to show how you interact with students and how you basically facilitate knowledge translation in your field. These are all good points to put on your resume. They're all good points to put in your applications. If you want to go for a postdoctoral fellowship, a lot of times PIs like to see that you can actually train a student, that you can actually guide them and help them become a better researcher. Because if you're going to become a PI, you're eventually going to have to get your hands on an undergrad and take them from an undergrad to maybe not a postdoctoral fellow, but take them from an undergrad to a full-fledged graduate student. That's your job. And of course, it's always good to get this experience early. Now, if you're a postdoctoral fellow, a PI, research associate, chances are leadership experience is not necessarily why you're here. So the final point that I'll make, goodwill. We were all undergrads once. We were all scouring through emails, knocking door to door, depending on how long ago it was. And we were all getting turned down by professor after professor after professor, wanting to just give it a shot for once, hoping that someone would take a chance on them. Now, you can give that opportunity to someone. And this is the third reason why our mentors join the research experience. All right? Thank you very much for coming out here on a very rainy Tuesday evening. And I'll open the floor to any questions you guys may have about this program or applying or what you'll have to do in the next couple of days with the mentor bios. Any questions?
I was wondering, so if I am to participate, am I mentoring like a multiple student?
You'll mentor a maximum of 3 students.
Right. But
They'll.
there is 1 or 2, or so you never know until you.
Generally speaking, unless one of them drops out, you'll be mentoring 3 students, but they'll all be working on the same research project. So you'll basically be guiding 1 research project. The reason we do 3 students is, it's to provide more brain power, and really it's more of a community thing. This is tough for students their first time around. They want someone who they can like chat with at 3 in the morning or something, call up after that ComSci midterm or something like that and say, hey, did you finish the experiment? I couldn't find the link to this particular method. And that they need partners. They need a little bit of help. That's more what it's for. We have them all doing 1 research project. In the past, a mentor has said, hey, I don't really care about how many research projects I have to guide. All my students want to do different research projects. Can I just guide 3 different research projects? And we said, sure. If it's okay with you, it's all right with us, basically. But to make your life simpler, we've put them in groups of 3 so that they can communicate together, and so that, of course, they can back each other up. And also, we've only given them 1 research project, so you don't need to keep track of 2 to 3, just 1. All right?
So when you say 1 research project, you mean 1 research question?
1 research question.
How does it work with the posters?
The posters? It'll be a 3-author poster. Yeah, I know what you mean. We've talked with Merck about this actually. So yeah, when it comes to actually presenting your poster, and you guys are all researchers, so you know the difference between a 1st author poster and a 3rd author poster. To be completely honest, this is to get their careers started. This should be something that you'll put on your first CV and should start to disappear around 2 years into research. If this is their pride and joy of their research career, then you know what? Being first or third author isn't really going to make a difference. If this is going to be their last research poster, then it's not going to be so much of a problem. We're going to tell them about this. In Merck particularly, it's not that big of a deal. And in terms of actually, it is a bit of a problem, yes. And it'll have to be something that the group will decide on an individual
Well, you
basis.
see on papers and that too, though, you know, the authors all contributing equally to the work or that kind of thing, so.
Mhm.
I think it's that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, it comes through most if they're basically interested. So if they're applying to a PI and the PI said, "Oh, you're only a third author," they'll probably just say, "Oh, we all contributed equally," basically, and I don't think it should be a problem there. But if anything really goes wrong, we have all our contact information, all the records of the posters produced by our students. So they can always just cite undergraduate research opportunities, and we can say, yeah, no, all authors on Rex posters are equal contributors. There. So that's not always the case. Sometimes for certain research, you'll want to put your PIs, so your PIs on there, depending on what they're doing, and your own names as last authors, basically. But that's, in Merck, it's not as big of a thing. Having a last author poster for a researcher in Merck is not as big a thing as having it for an international conference. You guys have bigger things on your CVs. It's mainly the experience. Yeah.
What is the expectation from the students about getting to actually do stuff in the lab?
Yes. I've told them this a couple of times. And if any one of your students say that we have promised to put them in a lab, you take them to me personally, and I will correct them. At the beginning of every classroom presentation, I have mentioned that what we teach is the problem-solving abilities, the cognitive abilities, how to think like a scientist, not the actual lab skills themselves. No mentor has any obligation to allow them within to allow their students within 300 feet of their lab. No mentor has any obligation. Now in the past, some mentors have said, "Oh, sure, you guys want to do a titration of something? That's not very dangerous. Sure, come in, I'll spend an afternoon with you, I'll show you something. If you guys want to do that, that's cool. We always encourage you guys, if you guys want to do something extra for the students, we encourage it. We're happy. But we do not oblige you for it, and more importantly, we do not have any kind of financial backing in case they break anything or any kind of insurance. We cannot guarantee them. So, yeah, if you let them into your lab, make sure that it's something that they just can't break anything, that it's not going to be anything dangerous. Just, yeah, make sure that it's safe. These are students that you're bringing into your lab, and it's your lab. Basically, we have no control over it.
Have the students done ethics training already, or is that
No.
something that we can kind of help them through?
We haven't. All right. Most of the students, unless they're ethics majors, that's another story. But okay, so this is a multidisciplinary program. So unless there are ethics or maybe some philosophy majors, some certain arts places may give early ethics training. But most of our students, particularly in sciences, they might have had a little bit of ethics, like really like a paragraph on ethics when they were in Bio 140. But no, they haven't had REB or any of the actual formal ethics trainings. They might know a little bit, but no, they haven't had ethics training. Merck doesn't require ethics training. Neither does our program. We're considering providing it in future years, but as well as biological and chemical safety training, but that's still down the road. We're still trying to refine the mentorship process right now.
Can you maybe provide us with resources? I'm particularly
Oh.
So like library resources to point them towards?
Library resources.
In terms of like plagiarism, or what is it?
Okay. Your students are going to know what plagiarism is.
Okay.
Yeah, half of first year is basically how do you write a research paper and how do you not get sued for writing a research paper. This is arts. It's not arts. English 110, 112, I believe, is academic writing, and it all goes over. It goes over all of this. Students, even out of high school, should have an idea about plagiarism. In addition to that, we will be providing a workshop. So we will be providing workshops on writing research questions, creating methodologies, creating a presentation for Merck, creating a poster, presenting at conferences. We've got workshops to back them up a little bit, but and we will probably touch on plagiarism a bit, but I don't think we'll have any formalized training other than we'll have some of the librarians actually coming in and giving it. We'll tell them to mention plagiarism in their lecture, definitely. But yeah, they will have at least some idea about plagiarism. Hold on, before I answer your question, that brings me to a point. The research experience is an evolving program. So if there's something you guys think would enrich this program, make it better, tell us. We're all ears. We're here to help the students, just like I hope all of you are. All right. So please tell us. We're all here for the same purpose. Yeah.
On the topic of workshops, I know you guys run a number of workshops throughout the program. Will we be given information about what's covered in each workshop so that we have an idea of what the students have already learned from you guys, so that we don't have to go over that stuff?
We won't necessarily begin due to copyright reasons. We can't actually record each workshop. This is the only workshop that we can record, and as you can see, pretty much everything is original material. But when we start bringing librarians, other professors, copyright issues come in, and
I just mean like a paragraph or something.
Yeah, no.
Basic outline of what's covered in each one.
There will be a basic outline. More specifically, for each particular objective. So, like if you're writing up, if you're on the research question stage, we'll be providing you with. Hold on. Excuse me. Sorry. We'll be providing you with we'll provide you and the students with a little booklet on how to accomplish that particular objective, what we're looking for, what to keep in mind, what to look out for, basically. So, and in terms, we haven't done write-ups of workshops yet. So, kind of like a general gist of it. But if that's something you guys find would be valuable, then we can definitely start doing that.
It's just an outline or something.
Yeah, no, we can totally do that. Usually, in the past, I've just provided usually 2 or 3 sentences saying this workshop will cover this basically topic. It's usually just like how to make a research question, how to do a literature review and find papers you're interested in.
You can also find it on your mentor's guide. We do have the timeline on there as well. It's not so much specific. It's very just a general thing, like one sentence saying, "Hey, this is what we're doing at workshop." So yeah.
Another thing I should mention. Do you guys know about the mentor's guide yet? I think I CC'd it. I attached it to a ton of emails that we've sent out.
Yeah.
The mentor's guide is basically, it's your go-to. I'd have to say it's the largest collection of information we have about the research experience, and specifically for mentors, the mentor's guide. We've also got a student's guide, and these are both living documents, basically. They'll be updated they'll be updated a lot. So we're going to try, what we wanted to do was create one document you could all refer to when you guys had questions, basically. And there's an entire section on the program. Right now, I think it's about 2 or 3 pages long. By the end of the year, that'll probably be looking more like 20 pages long as we update each individual section. When we get to the research question, we'll update it with all the material for the research question. And anything that comes up, there's FAQs that are about a page long. I'm pretty sure by the end of this, they're going to end up about 4 or 5 pages long. Yes. Basically, it's your go-to. If you want to find it, go to the For Mentors section of our website. Our website is uro.ubc.ca. Pretty simple. And go to Rex, and then of course For Mentors, and you should find around the registration link there should be a link saying Mentors Guide. That's updated around once a week, I'd say. Unless there's no updates. There haven't been updates for about a weekish, but we're going to start updating it pretty soon. And all right, you had a question?
Yeah. So for, in terms of like due dates and when they're handing stuff in, who are they responsible to? Like, is it our job to enforce these due dates? Are they turning it in to somebody in the program? Like, how does that work?
The due dates they're reasonably soft, I'd say. We want the students to have, we'd really like it if the students had them, they're submitting all this material to us, for starters. So of course, that means beforehand they should be submitting it to you, you should be reviewing it. We look everything over just to make sure everything's in order. We don't necessarily do harsh evaluation, that's more for you guys. We're just trying to keep track of the groups, keep track of their work. If you think in particular your group needs an extension and it's justified and it's good, and they're still going to get everything on, mainly the due dates are to keep them on track, more or less. So if you think it's going to be fine, they've still got plenty of time to get to their next objective, they're going to get their poster done on time, it's fine. It's to give them, the deadlines are there so that they can procrastinate in chunks, in essence. Instead of the entire program, the research experience started out in a 2-week program. We then learned we need to give them 6 months. The entire research experience, as you guys know, could be done in about 2 weeks. If you've got experience, it can probably be done in even less time if you're familiar with the literature. But for a student, it takes about a good solid 2 weeks. And when I say 2 weeks, I mean literally 2 weeks. No sleep, no eat, around a good 2 weeks. I've seen, a little bit of sleep and a little bit of food, but you know how it is. A good 2 weeks of solid cramming. The kind that only happens before a major grant proposal. They can do it in 2 weeks, however they're going to wish they didn't. I've seen students do it and they all wish they didn't do it in 2 weeks. Thanks. All right. Yes?
I have one more question. I'm probably in a very small minority in this room of people who are in the arts and not in the sciences.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I know that this was originally designed for science students and that you're expanding into the arts.
We're still getting used to it.
Okay.
It's evolving. If you have suggestions, like I've said lab a couple of times, I'm sorry any other art students who...
The question is, do you have a sense, I mean, you said you already have 200 students enrolled. I'm assuming that has the deadline for them passed or because...
No, not yet.
Okay. I mean, do you have a sense of what the interest level is from arts? Is it going to be like there's nobody interested at all? Or
If there's no...
about it, or-
I'll be completely honest. When it comes to the research experience, if there's no one interested in your research, you can probably just send me an email and I can find some.
Okay.
Like, if you don't have people applying, tell me and I can rectify this situation. The reason I say this is because we've got 200 students. If I really wanted, I could pull 500. It would take maybe another week or two of work, but I could probably grab around, we recruited all 200 students in 1 week, to put it in perspective. If you give me another week and a half, I could probably, and that's solely from the Faculty of Science. In terms of arts, we don't have a ton from arts.
I have seen a couple on the registration bill.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can have people in our department advertise it to first year classes.
We're already starting advertising actually. So actually, in terms of advertising, I'm one of the, I've done all the advertising. So literally just send me an email, and in particular classes that you think there'd be first years in that'd be receptive to this.
Okay.
And I can go, and I've given about 12 presentations, I think, so far last week. So yeah, no, I love giving these presentations. I love stepping up in front of the students and telling them about the program. It's actually a really spectacular thing. Like, you should see it. You should see it when you step up and talk to these students about the research experience. Half of them are taking photos, videotaping me, scribbling down the address. Like, it's a really it's a pretty touching thing. They want to learn more about research. They truly do. So when you say you don't have enough students, I say, how much time do you want me? How many do you want?
I don't know if I have enough students. That's
All right, now we've been focusing mainly on sciences. We took some minor. We were talking with AUS, and we took some minor steps into arts to test the waters. But mainly because we didn't know how many arts profs we got. We're going to go over the numbers, I think, tonight and tomorrow, and probably do up some more promotions later this week, and see if we can boost our arts numbers. But I know we've got around the neighborhood of like 5 or something.
5 or 10.
5 or 10. We could probably boost that up to 30 pretty
Yeah,
easily.
We haven't really been targeting presentations at the arts faculties and specific. Tomorrow, I think I scheduled Adam for 2 of the psych classes, Psych 217 for tomorrow. So hopefully we got
Specifically, if there's any art students or any not art students, any arts researchers in the audience, send me an email and tell me particularly what kind of just one word, what field you're in, and I'll go promote in the appropriate class and see if we can find some keen students. We should be able to. Also, I do apologize for my highly science-centric talk today. We're expanding. We're expanding. Yeah. Good question.
I got the impression that the first draft of the students' research question was going to be generated completely by them without any guidance or input from us. Firstly, does that happen after we've already selected the students so that they at least know? Yes. Okay.
So basically, we tell the students. We tell the students that they should have their first draft done before even they select the student, before even they've finished their mentor selection, just to kind of push them in the direction of looking into the literature earlier. But we don't really expect them to actually have solid research questions until they know their mentors, instead of coming up with like 9 different research questions for 3 research questions over 3 different mentors, basically. And also, when they come to you, we're just trying to pressure them to get as much done early as possible. So when they finally get to you, it's more to get the panicking out of the way early, to be completely honest. Because we don't want them meeting with you, knowing absolutely nothing, and then going off, panicking for a week because they still don't know how to find a research question, and coming to you guys with a couple of really malformed, completely implausible research questions based on papers that are maybe vaguely related to your field of research that like were published in some terrible journal somewhere. We want that stage to happen kind of at the first meeting if possible. So we're telling them to go out and find their stuff. And yeah, the stuff they're going to bring to you on that first meeting, maybe it'll be really good, but expect to give them at least a little bit of help. All right? Yep.
Question along those lines. So the question that they're formulating will be like somewhat within the area of our research?
Yes.
Or, okay.
They should be choosing you as a mentor because they're interested in your area of research. And in all my classroom presentations, I've said you're going to choose a mentor, and you're going to find a question that interests you, and you're going to find a question in their area of research that's interesting to you. So it should be something that you can speak to with knowledge. If it's something like I study HIV and how viral infections of HIV can influence your aging process. And if someone comes to me and says like, "Oh, I want to study the effects of I don't know. I want to do a sociology project where we study how certain preventative measures or certain preventionist treatment measures can increase or decrease the rate of HIV transmission." I tell them, listen, that's not even close to in my field. Like, it's kind of relevant, but you're going to have to pull into the biological chemistry area. You're going to have to pull into molecular biology a little more. Yep.
So even if they come up with some
Try and keep it, you want to try and, okay, well, this is kind of like how you interact with your supervisors. When you suggest something, about 8 out of 10 students will say, oh yeah, that was my original idea. I came up with that from the start, let's go do it. You know, they'll take your word pretty strongly. So if you suggest them in a direction, they will likely follow. If you get some students who are really, really interested in one particular area, and you know, that's good, because that is what we want to encourage. Students that are interested in research questions. Students that are passionate about their research, right? So if they're really interested in a particular research direction, unless like, it's really outside your area and you really don't think you could be any help to them, try and work with it. But generally speaking, that won't happen. But try and work with what kind of research questions they have. They should be related. Like, you'd be surprised how much you know about related fields. Or just how much a general knowledge of research. Like, I had a couple of research questions last year where students were coming up to me saying like, oh, Adam, we're interested in invasive species of a certain kind of beetle, basically, and how parasitism with another species of ant can cause the decline of the first species of beetle, which increases the population of trees. Like, I can understand that, and I can come up with a decent assay. I can tell them, like, okay, for starters, you're going to want to controlled environments. You're not going to just want to section off a forest, as that may not be particularly ethical. You probably want to try like greenhouses or something along those lines. Maybe try more molecular, I don't know, I'm all about molecular biology, but that's kind of how it rolls. Generally speaking, even if the research question is far away, it'll kind of develop itself into your field of research. Because you're the one mentoring them. So like, you'll be suggesting techniques that are in your field to measure that. Anyways, does that kind of answer your question, Maya?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, because obviously, it would be nice if they would be looking into things that I also want to know.
Also, the student, I've told the students that a lot of mentors are actually interested in hiring their students. I've told them that's only 1/3 and that they have absolutely no obligation to hire them or work with them anytime outside of the research experience. But keeping that in mind, it would be strategic in my mind if I were in the student's shoes to stay as close to your research interests as possible. And that's probably what will happen around 80% of the time. I basically. All right, is that kind of...
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Last question, it's a very specific one, but I did my undergrad here, so I know a lot of students here. And I've been in this community a lot, so I know a lot of people might be coming in the first year. What do I do about conflicts of interest if students who are applying to work with me are people who I know? Or is there a guideline, is this addressed at all?
Yeah, we can, if you're concerned about that, so if you're at all concerned about conflict of interest, I know it's particularly concerning in your case. If you're concerned about conflicts of interest, we could just send you the number of the student. So, no names. All you're really going to get is a blurb about your research. So you can just say, hey, I don't want to know the names of my student yet. Just send me a code or a number. And I can say like, okay, you're number 43, number 92, number 65, and whatever. And I'll say like, okay, these are their research blurbs. This is what they thought, all these students thought your particular field of research was the most interesting of all the other interns. And that's how we can do it. But most of the time, I don't think that's a huge issue. If it is, send me an email. Yeah. All right? Any other questions? Yeah?
So is this the second year you're running this program?
Third year, actually.
So do you have any statistics from the last years that how many students are still, I mean, for example, if you're a first year student, are they still there, or how many percent actually drop off? So.
Oh! I'd say about a good 50%. Generally speaking, in previous years, we've had a dropout rate of 50%. Partially, it was because we didn't provide them with an orientation. They weren't entirely sure about what they were getting into. We've gotten feedback about it each year. Another part is just, I know it sounds surprising to you. I've done 3 years of research myself. It's a little surprising to me. But doing six months to come up with a research proposal with full course load is a pretty difficult challenge for first or second year. Especially it's their first time, it is difficult, and students drop out because they simply can't handle it. So generally speaking, the dropout rate last year was about 50%, where we gave them a nice scary lecture about this, or a nice scary lecture about the research experience to hopefully say like, look, this is going to be difficult. Don't actually sign up for a mentor unless you think you can actually handle the workload, basically. So we're hoping that'll come down. But as I said, if your students drop out, I know it sounds a little mean, but they are replaceable. Okay, so, all right. Any other questions or? Nothing? All right, excellent. Do you guys have anything you think you want to say? All right, cool.
Thank
Lecture-
you so much for coming. Really.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, without you guys, really there would be no research experience. And to be honest, there'd be a lot of very, very upset kids, very lost kids. Actually, some of them are older than I am. There'd be a lot of very disappointed students. I know you guys don't think about it, but I want to share this to you. I've had a couple of students over the years who've seen me walking down the street, and they just come up to me and say, "Adam, I can't believe I get to meet you." And I just look at them and I have no clue who they are. And they're like, no, it's okay. I know you have no idea who I am. You told me the first time you met us that you're really terrible with names. You're really terrible at remembering this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to thank you. The research experience, my mentor was amazing. This program really helped me understand how the world of research worked. And it was the #1 reason I actually got into a lab and found out that I liked research and that it would actually be an enjoyable experience. Like, we've had execs walk down the street and just randomly come get hugged by students because this program does start their careers in research. And you guys are the #1 reason that these students can get into research at such an early year, get their publications and become competitive at such an early age. And thanking you guys is something that we all really want to do. All right, so finally, thank you for joining.